Hello all, welcome to another endgame study from the Solving Harder Studies to Improve Chess Calculation series. This endgame study comes from Dmitry Petrov, another chess Russian composer. It's from 1958. It's very interesting. It's a position where we have our two bishops attacked and black is threatening to promote a pawn. So for the practice, as always, I suggest you watch the series guide so you are better prepared. If you have already or if you are aware, the countdown will start. It will be the main countdown of 10 minutes, and then I catch you up with the beginning of the solution. And here we are, and the first right move, it's obvious, it's rook d8 exclamation mark. So the idea is we had our two pieces attacked, and so here the rook is protected. So if the rook takes our rook, then the bishop solves the problem, keeping the two bishops. The other bishop is controlling the advancing of the pawn. So this was the simple solution. You may not believe it, but I've spent 40 minutes with the wrong idea. So the idea was to sacrifice one bishop and then try to win decent game of rook and bishop against rook. I went with this line. So the idea was to try to win it, of course, even if black has an extra pawn. And the position failed very badly, and I spent 40 minutes with the wrong first move. So as you can see, sometimes we are so blind to see the to look into the obvious solution that we are able to go down deep with the wrong line. So here that was more for a curiosity. So here the first right move, which looks obvious after we saw it, it's to play directly rook d8. So now black has two lines, two strong lines. I'm going to start with one, not the main one, which is to go with the rook to f4 check. So here we have two options for the king. It needs to go just or to e5 or to e3, because otherwise it won't be in contact with the rook, and next move the king takes the bishop and we still are controlling the pawn. So not a good idea if not for one of these moves. If you go to e3, which is the right move, now black is going to try to advance the pawn, so brings the rook to a4, and now we can simply use this simple technique. Notice that we have this key square, so we can exchange rooks over here, but of course we can't do now because we have the bishop attacked. So first we remove the bishop. This is a very easy and interesting idea. So we keep this option open to control the rook. Now, for example, the pawn advanced, but now I have this simple idea. Check, the rook takes, the bishop takes, is controlling the advancing of the pawn. Next move, we take the pawn, so it's a game over for black. But let's say, for example, we go with the wrong one, king e5, and now the idea is simple. Black is intending to advance the pawn, because if the bishop takes the pawn, the rook attacks the bishop. Notice that we keep attacking the h4 bishop. So the bishop needs to move with tempi, and of course the only way is to attack the rook. But now the rook attacks the bishop back, and now we have a draw, because we have both bishops attacked, so we are going to lose one, and then we get a draw endgame. But white over here, of course, seeing this one, seeing this option doesn't work, comes with the rook, so attacking the pawn. So now it's black to play, and I'm going to start the clock for 1 minute. You have a guided solution, and if you need you want more, you can pause the countdown, and after the countdown I will resume with the continuation. And here we are. And of course, not easy, but the sequence of the moves it's what matters, because I need to check the king first. Then, for example, the king goes to e6, and then I have this brilliant continuation. Rook f8. Notice that I'm offering the rook. So if white takes, then I can promote to a queen, and this is a draw end game. Although white is a bit better in material, this is a draw end game with a queen. So if played well, of course. And other options over here is the check from the rook, so protecting one of the bishops. Now, let's say the king goes to h3, but now we simply can protect just one bishop. Let's say we protect the light square bishop to f7, and now the black has an easy way, just promotes the pawn to a queen, forcing the rook to take, then grabs the other bishop, and we'll play a draw in the game from here with a rook and bishop against rook, which is in this position draw. Uh, why this check and not going directly to f8, you may wonder. Well, because over here it's different, because we have the bishop also controlling the pawn. So the check, the previous check, let's say just one before, has the advantage of blocking the king from blocking the bishop from reaching the pawn. So let's say we go directly to f8, which is a mistake. Then the rook just checks our king, so protecting the h4 bishop. The king moves, and now I can simply take the pawn. Notice that every piece from white is protected, so now I am playing against a solitary rooks, which is a win for white. But then you may wonder, okay, so I check the king over here. I check the king, and so if the king goes up, blocks the bishop, why it doesn't come back? Well, because the same idea goes, but now the rook won't have the possibility to protect the bishop from a4. So I can go again to f8. So if the rook takes, I promote to a queen. We already know that. But what else can white do over here? Because if it goes over here, it's not check anymore, and so the rook is attacking one bishop and the king is attacking other. So very interesting idea to find, but uh, as we saw, this was one line that we also need to play. But black here is going to another route. It's going to first play the brilliant, the interesting, not brilliant, okay, the good move, a2. So now white is, of course, forced to take the pawn. There's no other way. So we grab the pawn. Of course, now the rook is hanging, so the king is threatening to take the bishop, but the rook is hanging, so black delivers this check, of course. This is obvious. And now we have a similar situation with the line of one rook f4 check. So now we need to decide where the king goes over here. And of course, it's not hard, because if it goes to f5, we can simply see that the rook attacks the bishop. Again, we have the same situation. The bishop comes to b3. It's the only way. We have two pieces attacked, so the bishop needs to counterattack one. And of course, the rook goes to b4, and now the two pieces are attacked, so black is able to draw. Notice that after bishop b3, this is a mistake again, because then we have this idea, so checking, and then we can protect both bishops. So over here, the good move from black is rook b4 and gets a draw. So it's easy to see that king e5, it's not working. So the king needs to go to e3. And of course, now we get the same idea. We attack the bishop. Notice that if we just check the king over here, it's not working. The king goes to e2. Now attacking the bishop is not enough, because we will have this idea of checking the king first, so protecting the h4 pawn. The king moves, and now I bring the other bishop, so in time to protect both bishops. So the rook goes directly to a4. Now the bishop counterattacks the rook, and the rook again is going to attack our bishop. Notice that again this doesn't work, because I will bring my rook in time, protecting the h4 bishop. The king moves, and I have time to protect both bishops. So when the bishop counterattacks the rook goes to b4, and we are now in the main line. It's white to play, so we have both bishops attacked. Notice that the rook taking on b3 will be check, even worse, okay? So it's white to play. You have 1 more minute, and I reach you back for more solutions. And here we are. We don't have many options over here. We are forced to bring our rook, checking the king, and forcing the rook to take our rook. But okay, this is an hard situation. We are attacking the rook, but the king is also attacking our bishop. What can we do now? Another minute, and then I come back to finish this in style. And let's go to the final brilliant move. It's a very, very, very interesting one. I hope you have found it. It's going with bishop e7. Brilliant. And suddenly the rook is lost. So we didn't took the rook with the king immediately, which would be a draw. If we took the rook, then the king would take our bishop, and we find a way to completely dominate the rook. Notice that the squares are all controlled. The bishop is controlling these ones. The king is controlling the other one. Then the bishop also controls the down here e1. Again, the rook is controlled by the king on e4, and on the other side the bishop is controlled. So notice that the bishops are dominating the rook completely, and so the rook only has two squares, okay, only has d7 and f4. And of course, if it goes to d7, then we will have a simple fork. The king moves, and okay, the king moves, and we take the rook 1-0 for white. And so the only other option is to go to f4. But this is also temporary, because what can we do now? We can simply check the king, of course. If the king moves away from the rook, let's say it's a loss, so it needs to keep in contact. If it goes over here, we have this fork winning the game, of course. And if the rook tries something like this, we can simply play simple chess. And as you can see, again, the rook is lost, and we have found the way to win this one. Hope you have enjoyed. It was a really interesting one, and I see you and catch you back in future videos. Bye bye.